Thank you. Welcome to tonight's meeting. My name is Councillor Nicole Trahey, Chair of the Climate Change and Ecology Policy and Accountability Committee. Before we begin, there are some housekeeping points to cover. This meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. By taking part, you are consenting to be recorded. Please can officers introduce themselves before speaking for the first time, and would everyone please use their microphones? It's the right-hand person button to go green and turn it off when you're finished speaking, please. There are tea, coffee and biscuits available in the staff kitchen next to reception, and the toilets are on my left-hand side behind the screen. I don't think you're going to need a badge, so I'm not going to read that. If the fire alarm sounds either continuously or intermittently, I will adjourn the meeting. Please leave the meeting in an orderly fashion by the staff fire exit, which is behind me to my right. Officers will direct you to the assembly point in Riverside Gardens. Let's proceed to the agenda. Apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Nimmo. I haven't heard from Councillor Miri, so he might be running late. We'll check on that and add it to the minutes. Declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest? No? Thank you. The minutes. The members agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of September 2025? Agreed. Thank you. Right. Overview of Hammersmith and Fulham's direct development schemes response to the climate change and ecology strategy. Will Norton will introduce the report and provide a presentation, highlighting key slides on London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham's climate, ecology and energy challenge. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Trahey. Good evening, everyone. My name is Will Norton. I'm Head of Development for the Council's Direct Delivery New Build Housing Programme, which sits within the Place Department at the Council. Just going to try and load the presentation that I have prepared for this evening. Hopefully everyone can see that. So this presentation aims to give a high-level overview of how the Council's direct development programme is responding to the climate, ecology and energy challenge. It's probably worth pointing out that the development programme, the direct delivery programme, sorry, currently consists of 10 sites, all at different stages of the development life cycle, but that should deliver around 750 new homes to the borough, of which 70% of those roughly are affordable. So just around 500 new homes across those 10 sites. We've currently got 3 of those sites on site being built out at the moment, one of which I'll come on to shortly as one of our examples for the case study tonight. We have a 4th site which is due to begin later on in the spring, Avonmore Primary School. Sorry, I should have mentioned, as well as new housing, we are also delivering a couple of new primary schools and some new community facilities. So this slide sets out the design strategy that we look to implement on each of our projects from very early on. So we work closely with appointed design and control teams, which includes lead architects, sustainability consultants, landscape architects, amongst many other specialisms. And we look at incorporating all aspects all of these aspects into our design. So as you can see on there, where we got several, so transport, waste, low carbon is a big aspiration. So the planning policy is currently to achieve in excess of 35% on-site reductions in CO2 emissions. Just picking out a couple of others there, energy, which is looking at using materials and design solutions to reduce energy use, so to keep bill costs lower. So that's things such as air source heat pumps. Passive design, which means designing a home that is so well insulated and sealed that it creates an airtight structure to make sure homes stay warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Biodiversity is another central approach. As you can see there, we will look to achieve, or planning policy looks to achieve a 10% or more net gain on all our developments. So obviously, yeah, we're always looking to achieve or exceed that by protecting existing green spaces and creating new places for green spaces, trees, and wildlife. So as mentioned, we also look at designing the home cost of living crisis, and that's a direct impact, obviously, on the affordability of properties. Moving on. So all our current 10 projects are delivered to enhance sustainability standards. So that means beyond the standards are required by planning policy and building regulations. Each of our schemes is continually assessed throughout the design process to ensure sustainability is embedded and performance is maximised at every stage. 7 design stages, route stages, and up to planning is 3 plus. We tend to, after each stage is complete, have a review and especially with internal council teams as well, to ensure that we're on track. So the 10 projects from estimates currently, on average, are achieving a reduction of 65% on-site CO2 emissions, which translates into roughly into a savings for residents on their energy costs of between 50 and 60%. As I mentioned, we've got 3 schemes on site currently, one at Hardtop and Lannoy, one at Farm Lane, and one at Lily Road, which will deliver around 200 new homes. All of these are being delivered to Passive House standards, and also with a significant on-site CO2 emissions reduction by up to 81%. So these projects will provide learning opportunities and inform our future schemes. So energy and climate considerations are central to shaping sustainable housing developments within the borough. Decisions made at planning and construction define outcomes for decades, often influencing energy performance, carbon emissions, and ecological balance. So by prioritizing low carbon technologies such as air source heat pumps, which I'll come on to in a bit more detail shortly, solar PV systems, the borough can significantly reduce operational emissions while also improving indoor air quality and thermal comfort. Integrating biodiversity measures, i.e. such as green roofs, green and blue roofs, sustainable drainage systems, enhances our urban ecosystems. It mitigates against flood risk and also supports mental well-being. These interventions are not just technical upgrades, they represent a commitment to social equity and also long-term cost savings for our residents. I think addressing energy and climate challenges up front ensures homes remain affordable, healthy, and resilient for the future generations. So as I mentioned, just some high level info there. We've got three schemes on site. The 81% average reduction in on-site carbon emissions from our first three developments, excuse me, which translates into an average of 54% reduction in residents' fuel bills. So the council has set itself an ambitious target to become carbon neutral by 2030 and positioning itself as one of London's greenest boroughs. Commitment drives every aspect of housing development, from design standards to operational strategies. One of these, for example, so we mandate BREEAM Excellent in our civic buildings and schools, which ensures that we're in the top 10% of the country's buildings for sustainability performance. So what do we have to do to achieve BREEAM Excellent? It's essentially a mix of high performance fabric for the building, low carbon energy systems and efficient water systems. Our residential schemes prioritise passive house principles. As I mentioned, the first three on site are passive house standard, which deliver exceptional thermal efficiency, air tightness, and reduces heating demand and improves occupant comfort. The energy strategy eliminates reliance on gas, replacing traditional boilers with air source heat pumps, again, which I'll come on to shortly, and integrating solar photovoltaic panels to generate clean electricity. Future-proofing measures such as being able to be ready to connect into district heating networks, for example, excuse me, ensure adaptability to evolving energy systems. And then these initiatives are also complemented by ecological enhancements such as the green and blue roofs, permeable paving, and sustainable urban drainage systems. By embedding these principles into all of our projects, the borough demonstrates leadership in climate action, creating homes that are affordable, resilient, and environmentally responsible. So how do we look to measure outcomes of sustainability initiatives? So the council's sustainability strategy is delivering tangible results across multiple developments. The first three, as I mentioned, on site have achieved an average on-site carbon emission reduction of 81%, significantly surpassing the regulatory requirements of 35%. And again, which then leads into the estimated 54% decrease in fuel bills, alleviating financial pressures and improving quality of life, we hope. Projects have advanced building fabric specifications, triple glazing, mechanical ventilation with heat recovery systems to optimize energy efficiency. Communal and individual air source heat pumps provide heating and hot water, whilst solar voltaic panels generate renewable electricity, which can then be used for shared and/or communal spaces. Ecological enhancements, probably covered actually in the previous slides, but collectively these measures demonstrate how integrated design can achieve both climate objectives and social benefits, setting a benchmark for future housing developments, not only in the borough, but potentially in London as well. So coming on to our project case study, which I mentioned is we're using Hartop-on-Anoy, which is the first site that we kicked off under our direct delivery programme. This is in southwest Fulham and is delivering 134 new homes, all of which are going to be affordable, which we're really proud of, and passive house standards. So this scheme we are hoping to complete by May, June this year, with a view to then obviously hand over and residents moving in. So a few bits that we can be specific about at Hartop-on-Anoy. So the scheme, as I mentioned, is a passive house, will achieve passive house classic certification, which ensures superior thermal performance and air tightness. Mentioned that residents will benefit with the 81% reduction in CO2 emissions compared to Part L of the building regulations with significantly lower heating bills. Part L of the building regulations sets guidance rules to make buildings energy efficient by reducing heat loss and carbon emissions. Energy systems include communal air source heat pumps at Hartop and Hanoi for space heating and hot water, complemented by roof-mounted solar PV panels supplying electricity for communal areas. Ecological features such as green roofs, permeable paving, and sustainable urban drainage systems mitigate flood risk and enhance biodiversity. Triple glazed windows and mechanical ventilation with heat recovery units improve the indoor air quality and acoustic comfort, particularly from the busy roads. Finally, additional amenities, including secure cycle storage, landscape green spaces, and outdoor fitness equipment promote healthy lifestyles and community well-being. So this project demonstrates how climate-conscious design can deliver affordability, resilience, and quality of life. I should have also mentioned that all our new build developments are car-free. It's safe for blue badge holders. So coming on to the air source heat pump, I don't know if everyone can see this and/or if people, I'm sure everyone's heard of what an air source heat pump is and probably knows what it does, but in case you don't, an air source heat pump will takes air from the outside of the property, and then using electricity, the pump itself compresses the air and releases it at a higher temperature. This can then heat is then sent to radiators and/or underfloor heating, with the remainder being stored in a hot water cylinder or buffer tank. And then that hot water, the stored hot water, can be used for showers, baths, and taps in the property. Mentioning once we finished the project at Hartop Lannoy Farm and Lily, it's obviously really important, having designed and constructed these sustainable, efficient homes, that then works into handover for and aftercare for our residents. So it requires robust aftercare to ensure the systems operate effectively and residents, most importantly, understand how to use them. So we are in the process of implementing a comprehensive handover process, which includes home demonstrations within the first few weeks of occupancy, user-friendly guides, and instructional videos for key technologies such as the air source heat pumps and ventilation systems. Energy efficient controls for heating, hot water, and lighting are installed alongside individual metering for electricity and water to promote consumption awareness. Maintenance strategies cover filter cleaning, air source heat pump servicing, and defects reporting, ensuring long-term reliability. Waste management plans facilitate recycling and composting, while outdoor amenities like play areas, green spaces support physical and mental health. Continuous feedback loops capture lessons learned, informing our future projects and improving resident satisfaction. This holistic approach ensures that sustainability goals translate into real-world benefits, empowering residents to live comfortably and affordably in climate-resilient homes. So when looking forward, we're looking at building a sustainable future for the borough and its residents. So my final slide, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear. Our approach is more than a response to current challenges. It's a blueprint for long-term sustainability and community resilience. By embedding these energy efficient, renewable technologies and ecological enhancements into every development that we're doing, the council is reducing carbon emissions, lowering household energy costs, and creating healthier living environments. These efforts contribute to broader climate goals while addressing social equity by ensuring affordability and comfort for all our residents. Looking ahead, the council plans to expand its passive house portfolio where possible, integrate circular economy principles in construction, and enhance biodiversity across urban spaces. Partnerships with educational institutions and community organisations will support green skills, training, and promote environmental awareness. Ultimately, these initiatives position the council as a leader in sustainable urban development, demonstrating that climate action and social progress can go hand in hand. The legacy of these projects will be measured not only in carbon savings, but in the improved quality of life for generations to come. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Will. That was a fantastic presentation, and I really like the graphics and everything that you've used. You've really brought the presentation to life, so thank you for that. I do have a few questions, but I wonder if my colleagues on the committee would like to start, and I can follow up. Is it okay if I go? I'll go ahead. Well, thank you very much. I've got a few questions to ask. I kind of almost want to go backwards, because one thing that wasn't, I don't think, seen in the presentation was cost. That I think what is brilliant is it shows that there's a cost to our well-being as well as financial cost. But if I can ask you to have a look and talk a bit about the financial costs, that would be great.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry, that was one thing I forgot to mention at the start. So, as I say, we have 10 live projects at the moment, which will deliver 750 new homes across those 10 sites. All of our projects have to be self-financing, and what that means effectively is a combination of subsidy, so GLA grant, right to buy receipts, Section 106 contributions, an element of borrowing as well, which is then paid off over a long period of time with the rents and the staircasing for the shared ownership properties, and finally the percentage of market for sale housing is what then funds the rest. So we always look to have viable projects that won't impact any of the other obviously really important services that the council delivers.
Thanks for that. And self-financing is absolutely brilliant, because it means the council taxpayer is not having to stump up. But I guess what I'm digging into is whether there's a much larger cost to be this green, because it's very impressive what we're doing. So whether the costs are much larger, or whether that is largely compensated for by grants from here and there.
Yes, the cost is larger. It's much larger, and so we're always, as I mentioned, at the various stages, as we're working up the design with our consultants, we also are constantly checking the viability. But yes, all these green, ecological, passive house principles so a traditional developer would not do half of what we're doing, to be honest with you, because obviously their priority is the return to their investors and shareholders, whereas ours is obviously to our community and our residents. So I mentioned about the 3 that we currently got on site, which are all hitting the passive house certification. As we've gone along, so we've got a couple of other sites now that we've got planning for, and or are in planning. We've looked to design those to passive house standards, but some of those are unlikely to receive the actual certification. There's so many different competing factors that go in to making it the passive house certified. But one of those is down to viability. And since we started, obviously, so Hardtop and Hanoi, Farm Lane and Lily Road, all started on site, Hardtop a couple of years ago now, Farm and Lily last year. The sites that we're now bringing forward and we'll look to go and procure contractors, it's whilst we're not dumbing things down, that perhaps it's not quite at the level that we were at on our first 3 schemes, purely down to rising costs and ensuring that the schemes are still viable and don't impact other services.
Thanks for that. So basically, the schemes that we do have going up, though, are viable, and we are maximising the space and maximising the units, regardless of the fact that the cost is higher. We're still managing to self-finance.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
That's really good statistics. Very good. A couple of, again, details. Grey water, you didn't mention, I mean, you mentioned sustainable drainage, but I wonder if there's a kind of, we know that the water is an issue in the world, whether you could speak to that a little bit.
Sorry. Yes, rainwater harvesting is also another feature that we look to include into developments where we can. I'll be honest, I'm not, without being sort of any more technical, it would probably be something that we'd have to get one of our consultants to elaborate on more how we do that. But I'd be very happy to take that away and come back with a fuller answer.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Again, I've got a few more questions, but I'm quite happy to hand over to my committee members, maybe Councillor Souslus, and then...
Thank you, Will, for the presentation. You mentioned in passing the district heating networks and how the developments might interact with those. I know it's been discussed in detail at a previous meeting. I wasn't here, but could you perhaps expand on what the plan is and how developments might interact with plans for district heating networks?
So one of the things that we look to do with the design team is to ensure that the developments, each development stands on its own 2 feet, obviously, and is able to operate, without the need for a district heating network if there isn't one currently, but they're future-proofed to basically enable them to be able to connect in if such a system comes along over time. Yeah, that's something that we always look to build into our design and planning, is to be able to have the ability to connect into a future network.
So future-proofing it essentially.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask another question unrelated to this? It's more about transport, cycling infrastructure, highways impact. I know obviously all the developments, both the direct delivery ones and anything else is car-free across the borough. I was just hoping maybe you could tell us a bit more about the specific developments, about cycling, provision, infrastructure, and again, how they impact on highways more generally.
So yeah, as you say, all our developments, all new developments are car-free. We generally, and again, haven't got sort of specific numbers, but we always look to over-provide in terms of cycle provision for each individual scheme. And the only parking that would be available is blue badge holding. Impact on the highways, again, we do so. Our consultants teams, especially when we're starting a project, can be anywhere between 15, 20, 25 individual specialists, and one of those is a transport consultant. We do studies as part of the planning application. We have to do studies to show any impact that could be on highways at various different times during the day as well, and night. And the other thing is that in less already held residents, the majority of these new buildings would not have the ability to have a parking permit either.
Thank you. And just I should know this, but is this the impact on highways and traffic generated and delivery drivers on? Is that considered as part of whether development is net zero or in its general carbon offsetting?
I think it plays a part. Again, I need to check that specifically, unless any of my learning colleagues know the answer to that. But I think it's more actually the the building fabric and the technologies that we look to incorporate into the development as opposed to highways and traffic pollution.
Can I just add,
Councillor Harcourt.
just to add on this, and I don't know whether John, you want to come in on this as well, but we have got an active travel working group that's looking at this very issue. It's met once so far. There's another meeting coming up in the next couple of days, and we're looking at all these various aspects that we've just been discussing and seeing how it can fit into the planning and transport strategy as well. It's not specifically transport strategy, but it will form a part of that transport strategy that we've discussed at previous meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Harcourt. Councillor Damas-Anderson, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Will. Really great presentation and some impressive figures there about energy savings and CO2 emission reductions, really positive. I'm just going to dig a bit deeper on the cost point that Councillor Trahey started. Are you able to give, even if it's approximate, a figure for how much additional investment is required to do all of these things, like the passive house design, the solar integration with the air source heat pumps? Is there a figure, and can you break it down in terms of how much of that's coming from central government grants versus SIL money versus council, etc.?
It's probably quite obviously every development is individual and
As I say, if it's
different inside them.
that's
Maybe as a percentage, it's probably somewhere between, again, depending on what level you go to, maybe 5 to 10% additional sort of uplift in your construction costs, I would say, which is significant. Obviously, when you're looking at tens of millions of pounds, it's a difference between making it a project viable or not, which is, as I say, why many traditional house builders will not go down that route. They'll look to achieve policy, or they'll have very good arguments as to why they can't get there. Mainly on viability. Majority of that is not necessary. So majority of our funding is either towards affordable housing, so GLA, affordable housing grant. The right to buy, I think, is depending on where we might allocate it best, I suppose, in terms of where projects viability is not necessarily as strong as it otherwise should be. I think there are sort of various grants, but currently we're not. We haven't been tapped into any of those necessarily. It's been more the affordable housing grants, right to buy, and some Section 106 contributions.
Sure. And just as a follow-up question, do you find that the affordable housing targets in Hammersmith and Fulham impact your ability to deliver higher quality homes or even a higher number of units?
No, actually, to be perfectly honest with you, Councillor, because as I mentioned at the start, so we're across those 10 sites looking to deliver 750 roughly new homes, and 70% of those we're looking to deliver as affordable. So again, whilst most traditional developers will always, plead poverty and say they can't get anywhere near the 50%, and we where possible we look to try and actually exceed that.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a couple more questions but then I will come to the residents that have turned up, because we might have questions from them. So I've just got a couple of more questions. You talk about CO2 reduction. Is there other pollutants that the mechanical ventilation cuts out? And we've had this at planning. A window's going to be able to open.
So again, where possible, natural ventilation obviously is the best source, but again, it will depend on a sort of site by site basis, and also whether or not we're able to achieve the passive house certification. Often, if it's an airtight building, it tends to be more like the mechanical ventilation sort of technologies. And/or there's also now something called NOx filters, air filters, that again, that's something on certain of our schemes that we've been, especially in the more sort of dense locations, that we've been asked to incorporate as part of the design.
Fantastic. And yeah, there's a little bit of me that the people that eventually, the residents that get to live in these places are going to save considerably on their bills. So there's a huge advantage in cost of living costs for those residents. And are we looking at doing a lot of these upgrades to others of our buildings in order that other residents can also benefit from what sounds like fantastic savings?
That's a very good question. Unfortunately, I'm only in charge of the direct delivery program, so I'm not sure what the answer to that is.
Councillor Harcourt is going to come in on that.
Very briefly on that one.
Yeah.
We actually do have a retrofit strategy, and at the moment there's 516 properties across the borough that are undergoing retrofit. We completed not so long ago a complete pilot scheme down in Franklin Square, which was part of this wonderfully named Energy Sprung development, which was paid for, I think it was European money. Remind me if I was wrong on that. Where we complete and utter thorough retrofit on all these properties. So that's the pilot. That was quite expensive. There's no two ways about that. But we're looking at these 516 at the moment who are going to get loft insulation, cavity wall insulation, ventilation improvements and such like. And then slowly that will be rolled across other parts of the housing stock. And that's the council housing stock. Obviously, we're working separately with the private housing as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for that. I'm going to go over to residents and see if they want to ask any questions. Oh, Councillor Souslis, I do apologise.
Sorry, just one question. Thank you for providing details on some of the biggest developments. Of course, one of the biggest, if not the biggest by some metrics, is White City Central. And I know it's perhaps one of the most ambitious. And I remember we had it planning a few years ago. There's a lot of interest from residents. They've been involved for many years to make this a successful scheme. Could you just tell us a bit about the scheme and what it will be doing specifically on greening and being a sustainable development?
It's very similar to what we've run through in the presentation this evening. It's again because of the sort of size and volume of White City. So it's 253 new homes that we got planning consent for in April, I think it was last year, and also the new primary school and community centre as part of that. So yeah, again, where possible, we've looked to incorporate as many of these initiatives we have as possible. Don't think it's actually going to be Passive House certified, but built to Passive House standards. So that probably it would be the main difference. And it's something. So as we mentioned earlier on as well. So since we got planning consent for that scheme, obviously the sort of economic conditions globally have changed, and indeed whilst we were working up the design and application. So as I mentioned, all our schemes have to be self-funding, self-financing, and the element of that is the private sales, and then the borrowing requirement for the council as well as the subsidy. So White City was so direct delivery, and I should have said apologies at the start, is where we act as developer ourselves at the council. With White City, it may be that we look to perhaps deliver that in a slightly different way than we'd otherwise envisage, but still very much looking to deliver that and hoping to start to move that forward later this year.
Thank you very much. And yeah, sorry. No.
No further questions from the committee. Would anyone in our audience like to come up? Would you come up and use the right hand button to, when it goes green, you can speak, and please introduce yourself.
Hello. Hello. Good evening, everyone. My name is Gauthier Well. I'm an HNF resident and founder of the Green Londoner. Before we move to today's agenda, I had two questions to ask. The first about PAC frequency. There's been 5 months between this PAC and the last one. I've done the math, including this one, including tonight, we only have 16 PAC before we're meant to reach net zero. So I don't want to rush anyone, but I think we need to step up the pace. So would you consider adding at least an extra meeting per year to strengthen oversight? For example, end of November. And I've got a second question regarding the way PAC works. Follow-up actions are agreed at each PAC, but the minutes that confirms those actions are often published months later. How are residents and councillors meant to track progress in a timely way? Could the council publish short updates against each action point rather than waiting for the formal minutes? I'm just taking two examples. I think Councillor Harcourt mentioned the transport strategy. I think we first mentioned this a year ago. We haven't seen anything so far. We haven't seen any draft or very minimal, things. I'm just wondering, where is the strategy? And what has the council done about it? I would be very surprised to see the council going into election without having the strategy at least published. The second point is that I think Councillor Chevauve-Verdier mentioned as well something about school streets review, about the first school streets in HNF, and we haven't seen anything about the review, about the findings. So that's just two examples of things that are mentioned, but we don't see the results, or residents don't know where we're going or where we're heading. So that's just two examples, but I think to really make things really transparent for residents, we need to make sure that we can follow up from one meeting to another. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll address the first question, and then I might go to my colleagues to address the second question. The regularity of the PAC, it really is just constrained by the council's schedule. So what we found was when we came back from the summer break, that September was practically completely full of meetings. So we had to juggle either that we put that we went in later in the autumn and put this PAC in on the 2nd of February, but there was no way of, I would have quite happily had another committee, but before we know we're going to have elections in May. So if we work backwards, there was no room in the schedule to put a third committee meeting, I'm afraid. It just, when you look at the I think it's 7 committees that have to sit, and the schedule with licensing and planning, there just weren't enough evenings, I'm afraid. So that answers the first one. I do apologise. We would like this to be more regular. And I think in previous years, we have managed to fit 3 in the autumn, winters, before the spring. So that there has been a bigger space thing. So I apologise for that. When it comes to the minutes and the actions and the follow-up, I don't know if anyone else can speak to that a little bit. I mean, the transport strategy has been worked on, so I think it's not in a position to report back yet. What we generally try to do is we have meetings about what is ready to come back to committee, and when the transport strategy is formulated to a certain extent, it will come back. We are in a manifesto process for the May election. That is a process that each cabinet member will be creating the manifesto for their department. Again, you'll see that before the election, because we always produce a manifesto. The school streets, again, I don't believe is ready to come back, but it's one of we do take a testing board from all cabinet members about what is ready to come back on the actions from the last few meetings. And if it's not ready to come back, I'm afraid we can't report on it until their process is thoroughly worked through. I don't know if anyone would like to add to that. would you like to follow up on
No,
that?
I mean, thank you, Nicole. It's just that it feels like we start fresh at each PAC, we start something or we discuss something different, but there's no follow-up. And for residents to keep track and to understand what has been done, at the council's level, it's very difficult because we're not, we're not from, the council. We don't know what's being done. So in terms of accountability, it's very difficult, especially on the green front, to know what progress has been made, if any, to be honest. It doesn't look like on the transport side there's been any progress, right?
Why don't I take that as a note? Now, I know there's going to be an election, but why don't I hand it over to the clerk as a note that the action may be to take an overall review of because I know there's quite a Gantt chart going on about advances that are being made. And there's advances being made in every single department. And we try and bring different departments to committee each time so that you can see, this one is all about building. Last one was very much about the energy. And I think we had Earls Court Development come and talk about their energy network. So transport has come up quite a bit and needs to come back because both last committees, that's been mentioned. So why don't we put as an action to have a review of everything? Because one thing we've been concentrating on is almost like a deep dive into each department. We looked at procurement last time, which is a bit dry, but was fascinating that every single purchase goes through a kind of green sieve now. So I think if we have a review next time, we'll take that as an action. Carry on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's also worthwhile that, because I do get reports and updates at my briefing sessions with the officers who are sat over there, but we don't actually necessarily publish that, I agree. So maybe I will go away and discuss as part of that process how we can make sure that there is an update on that, because I think it is important that you know what's going on. It's no good us sitting here saying, listening to what you're saying and saying, yeah, good idea, and then not coming back and telling you what's been done. So yeah, we'll go away and look at how we do that.
Yeah. Could you take I'm sorry, you would just come back. Are you okay? Take that as an action. Thank you. Any more questions from the floor? If you could push speaker on speaker button and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Wilf McDonald Brown. I'm a resident of Shepherd's Bush. First of all, credit where it's due. There was some fantastic stuff in that presentation. It's really encouraging to see the good work that the council's doing on its own developments and indeed in other areas. So, I'm not here just to criticize, but I would like to ask, actually, before I forget, I should also credit the council for reopening Hammersmith Bridge to bikes. It's now a beacon of active travel. Long may it remain so. And I know I'm not alone in the borough for hoping that it stays car-free forever. But the question I wanted to ask was actually about private developments. You mentioned the big developers who obviously have their profit motive. But how stringent are you being when you consider the planning applications by these big developers for, say, Shepherd's Bush Market, or Olympia or Earls Court, these big developments which just in terms of their scale dwarf the council's projects, I'm assuming. So are they being held to the same sort of standards in terms of passive house criteria, solar panels, biodiversity, et cetera, et cetera? That's my question.
Councillor Souslis?
Yes, hi. I'm a chair of the planning committee. So, and obviously Councillor Trey is the vice chair. And I can say from experience that the big developments you mentioned, they always come before the committee. And Councillor Trey in particular, she is always very on point about asking about the green credentials of these developments. And I know our planning department is very much on top of trying to make sure that they can maximize as much as possible the carbon offsetting and making sure that these developments are as environmentally friendly as possible. Similar to developments the council runs, it's not always possible to have in passive house, but it is definitely, I know that both because residents want it and the council wants it, it is always sort of very much encouraged by developers to do that. I'm sure officers can give perhaps more detail on how many of them achieve it and what the details are, but from my point of view, it is definitely something that we insist on and we emphasize that if you want to build a big development in the borough, you need to make sure that it is as green as possible. So I'll pass on to officers perhaps for more detail.
Would anyone like to come in on that, Hinesh?
Thanks. Hi, Hinesh Mehta. I'm the Assistant Director for Climate and Transport. With the planning process, kind of nationally set standards. So the development industry has to follow the National Planning Policy Framework and the GLA's guidance on new developments, as well as the Hammersmith and Fulham local plan. The local plan and various supplementary planning documents do cover environmental standards in some detail, all of which developers have to respond to and include as part of their development. And as they go through the planning process from different stages of the planning process, they come to officers and specialists in the council and then to various committees to kind of verify or approve their developments and the different environmental aspects of them. So it could be anything from biodiversity and ecology standards to things like the carbon impact of a development, both in its construction and its post-construction operational life. So all of those things go through the process and then through to the committee. And that's kind of an established process that the council has.
Yes, and I would add to that anecdotally, through sitting on planning, that every development seems to be coming forward and volunteering a certain amount of solar panels, air source heat pumps. We had the Earls Court development energy team in 2 PACs ago. It's incredible what they're doing there. What we've done at the Civic Campus is incredible as well. The bigger builds are, it seems, coming, in fact, leading the way in Britain, I think. Councillor Harkle.
Thank you. Yeah, just to add a little bit to that. I mean, you mentioned the Civic Campus, and I think that is one of the most important developments we've had, a massive development just up across here. As you can see, both the refurbishment of the town hall plus the new build housing, and also that energy centre, which is producing heat and cooling from the aquifer to 136 metres below the ground surface here. So that's part of the heat network. It can also be extended further. So that's being extended very, very strongly. You've seen the public square, or the start of the public square at the front, with work being done on that. So there is that. And I can recall when I sat on planning committee for many years, we regularly discussed issues around greening, carbon emissions and such like. I'm also on the OPDC planning committee, which is that massive development in Park Royal. It's in the north of the borough. And where there's some significant amounts of development up there, and lifetime carbon and sustainability of developments and such like is something that comes up every single time when there's a new development up there. So yeah, it is being taken into account and it is being enforced.
Okay.
Would you like to come back?
Yeah. Well, I'm semi reassured by that. I think the vagueness of as much as possible, as far as possible, doesn't entirely reassure me. And also your mention of carbon offsetting definitely doesn't reassure me, because that is a classic kind of cop out, really, a way of developers not doing the proper work of putting actual panels on the roofs. But I was there for the presentation on the heat system under the Civic Campus, and that is fantastic, cutting edge stuff. I suppose my initial concern came from the Shepherd's Bush Market development, which, as far as I know, has nothing so cutting edge as that. And it seemed to me from reading their proposal that all they were really doing environmentally was offsetting, which is a pretty much discredited tactic these days. So I would like to be reassured that that particular development is doing a lot more than it looked like it was.
If you're asking me, I honestly can't remember because it was, I think, December 2022 that it came to planning committee. And also the meeting was disrupted, and then I couldn't make the second one. But I'm sure we can look into that and send you the details. But yeah, sorry, I can't remember.
Okay.
Yes, we'll take that as an action and come back to you on that. Can we? And Rita, is that okay? Thank you. We'll come back on Shepherd's Bush Market because it's one that I'm not familiar with either, I'm afraid. Are there?
Sorry, can I just add? We have got climate change and such like SPD, supplementary planning guidance, which admittedly is guidance rather than actually being part of the plan. But with the new plan that's being consulted on at the moment, it will be incorporated into that. So the content of that will become enforceable, whereas at the moment they are just guidance.
Thank you for that. Any further questions from, please come up and the right hand button for the speaker, and please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm David Wilkins, a resident of Shepherd's Bush. It's a question, I think, for Councillor Harcourt. Out of all the, when you're talking about retrofitting council properties, we kind of get 60 here and 100 there. I have no idea what that means. Can you give us an idea of what percentage of council properties will be retrofitted by 2030?
If I'm right, we've got something like, I think it's about roughly 17,000 council properties, of which 14,000 are rented, the rest are leasehold. To give you, we're working as fast as we can on this, and obviously our target is 2030, but exactly how many we will get will be done, and each year from now on, that is not a figure I can give you off the top of my head, certainly. But you know, the aim is to get to that target. We're not talking about changing our targets, or like some boroughs have done, where they've taken housing out of their net zero calculations and such like. That's not what we're doing here. We've got a borough-wide net zero target, and we're including all our housing in it as well. So there's a number of boroughs. I was at a meeting the other day where we're looking at this, and a number of boroughs are actually looking at that particular issue, because obviously housing is one of the key contributors to the carbon issue, and taking it out of the calculation makes life much easier for them to get to net carbon zero. But I don't believe in fiddling things and fiddling the figures. If you know, if that's what we're aiming for, that's what we're going to move to.
I'm going to come in on this and just say another key tenet we have at Hammersmith and Fulham is that we do things with residents and not to them. There is currently, I know, a retrofit happening where we're going to have a show home, one of the council homes in Wormholt, which is my my ward. So, and it just so happens it's in a fantastic house, which was one of my residents who sadly passed. But it would be fantastic, because what we're doing is introducing residents to come and see the retrofit, to try and get them on board, because it's their homes that will be sort of having to do all this work on. So we have to have our tenants on board. So we've got to weigh up the two things of doing this timely, but also without imposing it on people.
Can I just come back? I'm delighted to hear that you're not fiddling anything, but to follow up a question Gautier asked earlier, in the same kind of context, that if we don't know what you're aiming for, we don't know how well you're doing, and you are our representatives, I mean, it needs to be that way around. So if the target's 20%, doesn't really, you know, I'm not saying that's a good or a bad target, but if the target's 20%, then we can see each year how well you're doing. I mean, inside the council, surely you have KPIs that measure these kinds of bits of progress, or not. Why can't we see the same kind of information? That's it. I don't really need, there will be an answer in due course, but thank you.
Thank you,
We
Mr.
do
Wilkins.
report on that. Perhaps Hinesh, you could talk a little bit more about the reporting process. We do have to report on this. For instance, coming up to cabinet not probably next cabinet or the one after will be one of the other reports that we have to do, which is on ecology and such like. So there is in some places there's a formal governmental requirement to report, and also there's the internal ones as well, which are published on our website.
Thanks. And yeah, there are some things which have a statutory reporting duty. So you'll be able to kind of access that publicly. There are some things which we report on internally purely because they are kind of messy, complicated bits of data that we spend a lot of time trying to make sense of ourselves. I'm sure you can appreciate the climate agenda is quite wide-ranging and cross-cutting. So we do have a process, a mechanism that we use to keep track of the carbon impact of both the organisation and the borough. We do report internally, and some of that is then translated into various publications. So we have our annual report, which the next one I think is going to be published in the next month or so. So that would be for 2025. We have a couple of other publications that you can also read. So in the booklet, the council tax booklet that goes out in March every year, there is a set of facts and figures on how we're doing against our target. So there are some things that are published, but probably not in the level of detail that you might like. And maybe that's something for us to take away and think about how we talk about that more openly.
Yes, and you could actually always email me. I can always see if I can find out any specific information, or Councillor Harcourt. Any further questions? Otherwise, one more from the floor. If you could push the right-hand button and introduce yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Katja. I'm a resident of Shepherd's Bush. And so my question tonight is specifically on the Green Investment Fund, which I commend the council for being one of the first one to adopt and for having such an ambitious target. But I personally have struggled to find, and apologies if I missed it, a detailed plan of how the council intends to invest or to spend the money. So for example, if I'm correct, for this current campaign that we're on, I've read that the plan is to direct the money towards sustainable drainage, I think. But I would welcome a plan where there would sort of detail what that means practically, what's the timeline, and equally when a phase is complete, I think it would be very good for us to see, what was the target, what's the plan, and by which, because I think it would go a long way if we had more clarity and transparency in enticing more investors, but especially local residents to invest.
Councillor Ree, we do have our internal expert on the Green Investment Fund with us. It might be covered in the next report to a certain extent, but would you like to come back on that? Or
yeah, absolutely. Firstly, thank you very much for what you said about the Hammersmith and Fulham green investments. It's a bit of a passion project of mine. It's great walking around the borough and seeing those little green signs, popping up on all of the rain gardens, the cycle hangers, and these sorts of things that we're putting in. I think you're absolutely right. We probably could be a lot better at letting people know what it is we're doing with this money. We do have a programme of capital projects that we're looking to fund with this. The money should be spent within 2 years of raising it, so it's important that we do have this pipeline of projects ready to go. We'll have a look into what more we can do to talk about all the good work that the money's doing. Thank you.
Would you like to come back on that, or you?
Well, I'll look forward to the.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we're going to wrap that up and move on to the next section of the meeting. But thank you very much for the presentation, and we will note that. We will note the actions and come back to you. Colleagues of the committee, noted the presentation. Thank you, and we'll move on. Right. So, welcome to the team. The revenue budget medium-term financial strategy. Councillor Rowan Ree, would you like to give us an overview of the budget for 25-26? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much to the committee for inviting me here to talk through the coming year's budget for Hammersmith and Fulham. It seems like only yesterday I was here discussing the last year's budget, but time flies when you're enjoying yourself, doesn't it? In this presentation, I'm going to go through the strategic context in which the budget is put together. I'll talk about the overall pot of funding for local government. I'll talk about how that funding is divided between different councils, and then I'll talk about what it is we're planning to do with that money here in Hammersmith and Fulham this year. Apologies, I've got a bit of a cough, so if I'm spluttering through this, I hope you'll forgive me. So starting off, looking at the strategic context, this starts with the Chancellor's budget back in November. This is where the overall size of the cake for local government funding is set, but also perhaps more importantly, this is where we get a number of the figures that we use to base our assumptions on for service use and how much money we need to put aside for things like inflation and service demand. So, for instance, we saw in this year's budget a modest amount of economic growth, I think 1.5%. Obviously, the higher economic growth is, the less demand we would expect to see from people for support from the council. We're seeing inflation coming down to 2.5%, although not quite as low as we'd like it to be. That filters into the amount of money that we have to spend on pay and increased contracts. And we're seeing interest rates come down as well from a peak of, I think, 5.2% a couple of years ago. We've seen a number of decreases in the last year and expecting to see a couple more this time around. That has an impact on the interest that we gain as a return from our cash balances and affects our borrowing as well. We have to consider factors like local demographics and the expectations, the legal expectations that are put on councils by central government. Over recent years, we've seen local government being asked to deliver ever more services for central government, often without the corresponding funding in order to do that. Changes in demographics will obviously have an impact on the types of services that we need to provide. And finally, we have a number of important regeneration schemes going on across the borough, big projects, things like the Civic Campus, things that will have an impact on how we spend money and will create revenue for us in years to come. So if we move on to fair funding. So this, if the budget sets out the size of the cake, the fair funding review decides how big a slice each council gets. Fair funding, the so-called fair funding review has been kicking around government now for over a decade. We've been anticipating it coming and anticipating it not being particularly good news for Hammersmith and Fulham, and that is the case. So while we've got a 3-year settlement this year as opposed to the previous 1-year settlements, it's 3 years of not particularly good news. We got the final figures just before Christmas. So I want to thank James Kelly and the whole of the finance team for turning everything around so quickly over the Christmas period when the rest of us were tucking into our turkey and sprouts on Christmas Day. They were working hard, going over their spreadsheets. But we have seen a reduction in funding as a result of the so-called fair funding review. Some of that has been mitigated by some small changes that were made, but this is a provisional settlement, and we are hoping to see some changes before the before the final figure is arrived at. So if we move on now to our budget here in Hammersmith and Fulham, the theme of this budget really is it's about safeguarding our services and the borough's finances for the years to come and the challenges that we know we're going to face. You know, I'd love to be able to spend a lot of money on flashy new services in the run-up to an election or cutting taxes, but the truth is that just wouldn't be prudent at this juncture. And so it's very important that we put in place a more sustainable financial system here in the borough, that we put in place buffers, that we give ourselves room to manoeuvre over the coming years, and that's what this budget does. There are a number of services that we provide here in Hammersmith and Fulham that you just don't get anywhere else. Things like our law enforcement team, things like free home care. We provided free primary school breakfast, something that the Mayor of London picked up, and now I'm pleased to say national government has picked up. But we've always been a bit of a trailblazer in local government in terms of providing new services that residents really value. The purpose of this budget is to protect those for the coming years so that residents can continue to see the benefit from them. We move on to some of the details of where the money is being spent. You'll see that we have put aside money for both pay and price inflation. We've put aside some money for essential pressures, but there is no new growth spending. So the money is any money that is being invested is to safeguard services that currently exist, not to provide new services. You'll see almost £18 million of efficiency savings that we're generating throughout the year. And in the longer term, we have 4 transformation programs looking at areas like staffing, property, revenue generation, and the use of technology in order to save more money across the council in the longer term. So if we move on to the areas of essential pressure, we've got £3 million there. The overwhelming bulk of that is around the change in interest receivable. Because of the council's cash balances, we're able to put money from interest into the day-to-day revenue budget. Because rates have fallen, there's obviously less interest there. While this is shown here as a bit of a negative in terms of the reduction in interest that we can invest, overall across the council, actually a fall in interest rates is a good thing for us. It means that borrowing is cheaper. And we have a number of capital projects that we're looking to get going in years to come, as I'm sure you've just heard as part of the previous item. If we move on now to the £18 million of savings proposals, the overwhelming theme of these is around stopping problems developing at an early stage. The sooner you can identify a problem, whether that's in the care system, whether it's around homelessness, the sooner you can identify that something is going to be a problem and step in to avoid it happening, the more money you can save in the long term. The homeless reduction strategy is a great example of this. We've gone out to identify the most egregious cases of homelessness in the borough, the most expensive cases, and set up a team specifically to tackle these. Obviously, that's very good because it's getting homeless people into safe homes, but also it's very good for our budget as well, in that it saves us an awful lot of money. You'll also see here that our council tax collection rate has gone up. Now that's due to a mixture of us getting better at using data and new technology to identify everyone who should be paying council tax, but also because of the council's ethical debt collection policy. Again, something of a trailblazing strategy that we've set up here in Hammersmith and Fulham, where if somebody is unable to pay council tax, we don't send in bailiffs, we don't send them to court to try and squeeze blood from a stone. Instead, we work with them to help identify benefits they may be entitled to help them with budgeting, to help them get on top of their finances so that they're in a position where they're able to pay their council tax in full for years to come. So if you move on to the final slide, now this just sets out the next steps in the budget setting process. I'm going to all of the PACs over this week and next. I'm very pleased to be here at my favourite PAC this evening. But next Monday, we will take the budget to Cabinet. And then at the end of the month, on the 25th, we have the full Budget Council where it will be formally voted on and hopefully passed. I'm going to hand over now to Kelly, who's going to go through some of the areas that will be of most interest to this committee.
Thank you, Councillor E. I'm Kelly Gooch. I'm Head of Finance for the Police Department. Let me just share my presentation. Okay, so in this presentation, I'll just take you through a few more of the specifics as they relate to this, the services in this particular PAC. So this is about the climate change and ecology budget for the new financial year. So a few key achievements. I'll move this away, where you can't see all of my slide on the screen. So some of the key achievements in this particular area are that we are recognised leaders in environment action. So we've received as a council an A rating from the Carbon Disclosure Project for transparent and bold climate action and commitment. And we've been rated by the Climate Emergency UK as having London's best climate energy emergency plan. We're also investing in tackling pollution and air quality. We've got the highest concentration of electric vehicle charge points in the UK and the largest concentration of air quality monitors in Europe. We're promoting active travel. We're trying to create a legacy of cycle-trained young people. We're delivering bikeability for families and encouraging green local deliveries through our Parcels Not Pollution cargo bike scheme. And since 2024, we've been enhancing biodiversity. We've planted 6 tiny forests and planted more than 3,500 trees. We've installed more than 46,000 metres squared of new greening and sustainable drainage on highways, and we've increased meadow and long grass management. Some technical issues. We are also investing in tackling climate change by investing more than £30 million in green capital projects, transport schemes and emission reduction schemes. So we'd see a bit more about that in our capital budget. And we're also supporting residents with safe, warm housing to reduce carbon and energy costs. So we're investing more than £1 million a week to refurbish and modernise council-owned homes. We've put more than 3,200 energy efficiency upgrades in more than 1,500 homes, and that's just in the last 2 years. Things like new windows, doors, roofs, insulation. And we're building 1,800 generally affordable homes for local people over the next 5 years. And these will have the highest energy efficiency standards and feature solar panels, green roofs, water harvesting systems. This budget also invests £120,000 every year in climate change projects and activities. So that funds low-level grants, energy efficiency grants, rewilding campaigns, ecology projects, climate engagements, those kind of things. And I know it came up earlier, we're investing £5 million through the H&F Green Investment Scheme. It's the largest scheme of its kind when it launched in November 2023. It's an innovative community investment scheme, so it's aimed at engaging local residents and businesses in H&F's climate and ecology aims. And it's actually a cheaper form of borrowing for us. It's cheaper than borrowing from the Public Works Loan Board, which is a more traditional form of borrowing. And we've now raised £4 million across 5 tranches. So we're nearly there with our £5 million target. And that's more than any other council has raised so far in this way. So how we're using it, we're investing in active travel measures, so improving urban green spaces and helping to roll out sustainable drainage. You've probably seen the new rain gardens on King Street. As well as protecting homes and businesses from heavy rainfall, they're also improving the look of the area. Just check, I might have missed a slide. Yeah. So also to point out that the role of the climate change team, whilst it sits in the Place Department, its role is very much to ensure spending across the wider council is aligned with its ecology aims. And as such, there's no revenue budget savings directly attributable to that service in this area. We're also looking to maximise climate action at the least cost to the council. So since 2021, we've secured about £19 million of grants, and that has enabled £34 million of climate projects to be delivered. So 15 million of match funding against that. You've heard a bit about our development schemes and all the different plans and rules that we have in place to consider carbon in our development. So we are encouraging developers to build low carbon developments. Where they're unable to meet those standards, we've been collecting carbon offset receipts, and that is ring fenced through investment in projects with a like-for-like reduction in carbon. We're also supporting residents with this budget to switch to electric vehicles. We've got 2,800 electric vehicle charge points in the borough, more than anywhere else in the country per head of population. And we've just secured £7.5 million of government funding to, in partnership with other boroughs, to install more than 240 more. So yeah, we have the highest number of charging points anywhere in the country. That's just a few things of how this new budget, as we go into the new year, how they're investing in tackling the climate emergency here. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Excellent news. Well, a mixed bag, but thanks for letting us know about all of that. Now, I've got a couple of questions. Firstly, or maybe really comments. What was my first thing? Sorry, Councillor Ree, if we go back to your penultimate slide, there was commercial income mentioned. I think it was 1.4, and it was on your savings slide. So why would we be saving from commercial income? Sorry, I couldn't.
Yeah, sorry. This is just the way that we go about presenting these figures. So income is recorded as a saving because it's not something we're not spending money. It's a reduction in how much we have to save elsewhere.
Brilliant. So it's incoming rather than. Excellent. I wanted to mention the tree planting and tree bed depaving. Again, we've had projects in Wormhole, and it's great action physically on the street, but on the ground that residents are seeing in action. So that's one brilliant thing that a certain amount of money is going towards. £1 million per week in improving our homes. It's just incredible numbers. Sorry, I have to point it out. It's not even a question. I just like to commend that. That is just fantastic. And the fact we talked about Section 106, Wilf mentioned it earlier, and we do appreciate that offsetting is not the ideal situation. And again, Councillor Souslis will confirm this as well, that in planning, we do pressure our officers to not accept 106 as an alternative to carbon reduction unless it's absolutely necessary. And the fact that it's ring fenced to a like-for-like carbon reduction elsewhere, I think goes a long way to supporting those figures. So I don't really have any actual questions. So I'm going to ask my committee members if they'd like to come in at this point with questions. Councillor Souslis.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentations and especially for the hard work you did over Christmas in particular. It's more of a policy question, I guess, for the policy team as opposed to on the finances. But you mentioned the great work that is being done on the rollout of electric vehicle charging. I've had some exchange with officers around the turbo charging and making that, rolling that out. I know it's something that a lot of residents in my ward, for example, have mentioned. Is this something the council is looking at anyone who is aware can answer.
So I think you're referring to the cross pavement charging. So national government made an announcement in the second half of last year to support local authorities in rolling out cross pavement charging. So this would be charging cables that are embedded into the road surface, into the footway specifically, to allow residents who don't have access to off-street parking to be able to plug their electric vehicles into their chargers at home. That funding, that grant funding is a limited pot of funding available to all local authorities across the country. We have applied for that funding. We should be successful in receiving that funding, and then we are currently working out the kind of challenges and opportunities with that in an urban environment like Hammersmith and Fulham. Our pavements, our footways, our road surfaces. Underneath them, there are lots of other utilities, and footfall is high, and lots of other things to consider, but we're actively looking at trying to trial some sites for residents and then look to roll it out if it's successful. So we should be announcing soon when we can pilot that and if residents can apply for that scheme.
Thank you very much. Sorry if I preempted your big announcement there. Just another question on, I've seen obviously a lot more of the bike sheds being rolled out across the borough. And I know, again, my ward, Fulham, there's about 4 that are coming. I imagine this will be part of, with money from the Green Investment Fund and everything, it will be a much bigger rollout. Do you have any numbers that you can explain how wide the rollout will be and the numbers? Again, it's okay.
So rollout of cycle parking generally. So we've got a large program to roll out cycle hangers. So those are the lockable sort of bread bin style cycle parking facilities that you will see across the borough. We've got demand for those, and we're trying to meet that demand as much as possible. We've got funding secured for that, and it's really just as kind of quickly as the manufacturers can deliver those units that we can try and roll them out as quickly as possible. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but there are lots, and there are lots more in the pipeline. Second part is probably the dockless cycle hire bays. So these are the dockless cycle hire schemes provided by Lime, Forest and other providers. We're currently in discussions with those providers to look at new arrangements and how we can allow them to operate safely and more effectively in our borough. At the same time, we are rolling out dedicated mandatory parking bays for those dockless cycle hires so we can reduce the amount of street clutter. We again have funding secured, mostly external funding secured to provide more mandatory cycle bays for those dockless cycle hires specifically. So it allows people to use them more widely across the borough and in neighbouring areas as well. And yeah, there's again a big programme underway to deliver more of those.
Thank you. That's very, very positive to hear. If I may, just one more question now, more on the budget. Councillor Ree, you mentioned, I saw in the savings that you mentioned that a bigger part of it is on adult social care. Sorry, it's not directly relevant to this committee, but I thought I'd take the opportunity. Now, obviously, we all heard that, the flagship policy about free adult home care in Hammersmith and Fulham. Just wanted to make sure if you can expand on the savings and, I imagine reassurance that that doesn't put that very positive policy into risk.
Thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. So a lot of the savings from adult social care, again, come from identifying problems earlier on. And in particular, one of the savings comes from giving residents, rather than us coming up with our one-size-fits-all approach to how people should be cared for, how they should be treated, directly funding residents to do the best things for them. You know, that's often cheaper than paying full-time carers, and often, you know, it provides a better type of service. They don't all need the same thing. So you can get people back onto their feet more quickly by funding different types of treatment or different types of care. And then in the longer term, they then don't need the same level of care. So really it's about getting people healthier as quickly as possible, which, you know, is in their interest, but also happily for us, it's also cheaper.
So it's more about making efficiency so it runs better as opposed to changing the fundamental principle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, no, certainly no plans to change the policy. All of the savings we've got here, all £18 million of savings, are from efficiencies rather than stopping providing services.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Downer-Sanderson, would you like to come in?
Kelly, Councillor Ree, thank you for your presentations. I just wanted to elaborate a bit more on the commercial income side. So you've increased, presumably on the previous year, your income by £1.3 million. If you could speak to how that was achieved, was it increase in charges? Was it, if you could just provide a bit more detail. I've got a few other questions, but we'll start with that.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, so I think the bulk of our commercial income comes from advertising sites. And we've consistently overperformed in terms of how much we've been able to get from those in terms of returns from people who are paying to advertise with us. So we've been able to increase the amount that we've budgeted for. Kelly, is there anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, we're also looking at some new schemes that will look to reduce the reliance on the council budgets in highways. So they're income generated schemes. So trying to get external funding and ring fencing that and investing that in highways rather than using our own council budget. So that's something that we're looking to implement partway through the year. Yeah.
Thank you. And just sort of a higher level question. So do you have a latest figure for what the budget shortfall is expected to be for 26-27? And how does that compare to the savings that you've made? And if there is a difference, how are you going to close that gap?
So for 26-27, we've got a balanced budget. There's no gap expected.
So these savings alone will meet the shortfall?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not sure if we've got the slides back on the screen, but if slide 6 from the presentation shows the changes, the extra money we're spending, the savings, and how that comes to a net position of a balanced budget.
Okay. And final higher level question. Is it still the council's intention to reopen Hammersmith Bridge to motorised traffic?
Yeah, as I understand it, yeah.
And what next steps is the council taking to pursue that?
So obviously we put together the business plan for funding our share of the costs of the bridge improvements. That's been sent to government. We're waiting on, I think, a decision from the Department for Transport on that. But I think maybe somebody who's closer to the process might be a better place to answer that.
No further questions from me.
Yes. Would you like to come up and speak the right-hand button to work the mic, and please introduce yourself. Yeah, it should go green.
Yeah. Pat Tukey, I live in Shepherd's Bush. I've done for 50 years. On that last point, I would have said that one of the main successes of this council has been keeping Hammersmith Bridge closed, improving the air quality around Hammersmith Broadway and for people living on this side of the bridge, and for those lucky enough to live on the Barnes side of the bridge too, and encouraging active travel over the bridge, which is used by thousands and thousands of people every day who walk, ride their bikes, ride their scooters, walk their dogs, and generally get themselves back and forth over that bridge without traffic fumes overwhelming them as they do it. And your presentation was great about, about what you're doing about the climate emergency. But why aren't we singing that Hammersmith Bridge is a great advertisement for what Hammersmith is doing, you know, for the good of the climate, for the good of the people who live around the bridge, and for the general good of the borough in preventing thousands and thousands and thousands of cars from crossing Hammersmith Bridge and driving through our borough to get to wherever else they're going to, because most of them aren't coming here, or they weren't when they did do it. The one big problem with Hammersmith Bridge at the moment is public transport. And the council has had a perfectly fantastic scheme proposed for electric pods going backwards and forwards over the bridge, integrated with the bus stops, coming up nearly as far as the Broadway, and offering people who can't walk, wheel, or cycle over the bridge an alternative way of getting into Hammersmith from Barnes and back over the bridge the other way. I can't understand why you're not really bigging this up as a great success instead of getting on this bandwagon of opening up because all the other bridges are full to capacity,
Pat,
which they
thank
are
you.
not.
Thank you for your comments. Do you have a question that relates?
Yeah, my
to
question was why aren't you acknowledging this as a real success for
I
Hammersmith
think
and
there's
Fulham?
polarised views. Councillor Reid, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think perhaps we should be talking more about some of the things that we've done. I think it's great that we've been able to fund the improvements on the bridge to make it easier to walk and cycle over. Yeah, obviously we'd like to go further, but for the moment, yeah, I think that's what we've done is very good.
Yeah, it's very good. It was too slow, but it's very good. And it's great to see it like that. I was actually going to ask a different question. It was just that...
Do you have a
I do have a
question
question.
to do with the agenda item?
Yes, to do with the agenda, to do with the report that you gave on, following on from the budget report. We come and sit here and we hear about all the good things that the borough's done, and they are fantastic. The report that Will gave was great. You know, many of the things that the borough has done, and the presentation you made gave us a whole list of things that you've done that have been really positive, SUDs and all of these things, and it's brilliant. But then I sit back and I think, I was a member of the Climate Commission, which sat in 2019, 2020, and we came up and helped you. I would say we had a small part in making this fantastic climate plan that Hammersmith wins all these accolades for. And what I see as a resident in the borough is lots of good schemes, but the same schemes being rolled out time and time again about our electric vehicles, our electric charging points, our SUD schemes, our food waste, but they are all so slow. Why can you not speed up these fantastic innovations that you have started out in pilots and never seem to have got any further with? Like, Wesley, the food waste scheme, which was a pilot scheme in 2018-19, has barely doubled, I don't think, its reach in the borough. It may have doubled it or tripled it, but it's still pathetic in terms of food waste.
Should we take one question at a time? Because sorry, Pat, but it's...
I just want to put it in the context of, we're nearly at 2030. Here we are at the beginning of 2026. When that report, when Hammersmith and Fulham declared a climate emergency in 2018, I think it was, 2019, it was for 2030. Okay, so there was 11 years.
Yeah.
We are 4 years away now from 2030, and we are not halfway through any of the goals that we had.
Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge and thank you for participating in the Climate Commission, which really has informed our policy and a lot of action that has come from that. I think we also acknowledged earlier that reporting back is one of the issues, and we've got that as an action.
Yeah.
Because I think things do seem glacially slow. It is a huge ship to turn, as it were. What do they say about cruise ships anyway? But it is turning increments in the right direction, day by day by day by day. So if we can come in on individual areas, I think Councillor Harcourt, were you going to talk to the food waste?
I can certainly talk about most of this. Certainly on the Hammersmith Bridge issue, which I know is the previous question, it's the improvement there is so much better. I mean, when I walk over that regularly, because my sister lives down in Twickenham, and who I see regularly, and I get the bus to Castleknock, walk over the bridge, and it's incredible. You know, you've segregated the pedestrian area from the cycling area. You're not constrained as a pedestrian down the little narrow walkways being run down by the odd cyclist who doesn't follow the correct rules or anything like, or danger of mugging. So it's fantastic. I think we have to go back to, you may recall the leader having said on a number of occasions about the meetings he had with government, and in particular with Grant Shapps, so it was made quite clear that there was a requirement under law for us to reopen the bridge. Now, that's where we were then. That's what the leader was told. But obviously public opinion is shifting considerably. And I think when we first closed it, I was well aware that, you know, public opinion would change, and that we may well, you know, it may well be something we have to look at keeping it closed, as you say. But that's, as Councillor Rhea said, that's the position we're in just at the moment.
Public transport's the problem there.
Yeah, and then there's, I am aware the pods that Leo Murray had an exhibition on down at the, wherever it was, where
the Riverside.
Yeah, of those as well. In terms of food waste and such like, obviously that is something we are looking at all the time and rolling it out. It took a while, because the danger when you bring something in like that is you get an immediate reaction. People don't want things. People wanted food waste, but when they suddenly find they've got it, oh, the recycling bins are too big, the other bins are whatever, and so you had all these sort of problems with this. But it is something that we definitely need to roll out, because you know, in terms of that was probably the biggest contaminant that we had in terms of the recycling we had. You know, people putting food in and mixing food in with that. So separating that out is a major plus, and it goes off to anaerobic digestion and produces.
What proportion of the borough's food waste is actually collected as food waste? Infinitesimal.
I will have to get you that figure. I don't know that figure off the top of my head.
And it's taken from 2018.
And I think, again, we need to invite Annie Baker back to report on waste recycling and recycling statistics in general, because she will have those figures to hand. I think she gave us a good report on contamination levels, which we think we're going to do a deep dive into ideas for reducing contamination levels.
Well, yeah, the contamination levels has been a big issue. It costs us an incredible amount of money with Western Riverside Waste Authorities. We're paying for the contaminated recycling in the first place. Then on top of that, it becomes general waste, so we pay again for that. And so, the contamination rates we need to bring down. And there's been some detailed work being done by Western Riverside Waste Authority on looking into contamination, the rates, what it is, and what are the main contaminants. And then we'll come back here looking at how we can go about improving that, because it is a big issue.
And that feeds in to budget in terms of savings, so we can bring those back as savings if we can move forward to reducing contamination. Was there another question in there? Otherwise,
my question is simply about the glacial rate of progress on all of the the programme that was established after the Climate Commission reported, and which the Council adopted. You did say, I would really like to see a report on where we have got to in relation to all the goals that were accepted back in 2021.
We've got that as an action for the...
Okay, and we need to see them on a year-by-year basis, because otherwise you don't know where you're going.
Review, because I think reporting will help you catch up, or help us all catch up with where we are. Thank you for that, Pat. Thank you. Casey, would you like to come up? The right-hand button to speak, and if you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
I'm green. Good evening, Casey Aberone, local resident and chair of Hammersmith Fulham Cycling. I have two questions, and one is a tangent can I go off on a tangent and we can call it? We'll rope it back in under co-production. So I just came here from another PAC where Councillor Miri was also had a seat there. So I guess we share the same pain of trying to be in two places at the same time. What we were talking, one of the things that we noted there, today I got a call from somebody telling me that they were going to install a defibrillator outside my workplace. I hadn't heard about this until I got the call, but it was a call that I was glad to have. And I asked the first question, which is, well, how are you going to stop it from getting stolen? And I explained that it's going to be in a container with where you get a code to it. So the next question then becomes, if this is going to be rolled out, how do we let people know? And this is where the question comes for you, John. I believe you're trying to rework a private, a borough-based parking app to replace Ringo. Is that correct?
Well, Ringo's changing its market position internationally, so they're moving out of the parking game. So we have a different provider that's been doing the parking permits, and they also provide the same thing as Ringo. Our preference is actually to move more towards the government model, which is where consumers choose which platform they use. And you could, just like booking.com is for holidays, you can use any platform you like and it sends it back to us to book the space. So that's what we want to move to. The government's a bit behind on rolling that out. It was supposed to be with us 2 years ago and it's still not here yet. But that's the general trend. So we're just having to fill the gap between Ringo exit in this particular market versus the government, new position from the government coming in.
Okay, because my thinking was if we could combine sort of like one borough-based app that would combine, say, parking, access to defibrillators, EpiPens, effectively such crucial services, but all in one place, that would help them be more accessible and more visible to people, and hopefully be cheaper as well. Is that something within the schemes or scope of things that you're looking at? Is that something that you could look into?
We can certainly look into it. They always look easy on the face of it, but with the technology, it can be quite complicated. But it is always an ambition to have a single one-stop shop. To some extent, Google Maps is kind of that kind of place of people overlaying their data. So there is kind of already a player that tries to do this, be the international librarians and everything. But it's matching the convenience and competing with the space on people's phone, the real estate on someone's screen of actually having an app there to place it and do that kind of stuff versus the other tools is always a difficult trade-off there for the tech market struggles with. So yeah, it's a grand ambition, but it's not as easy to deliver as we would like.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm back from
just coming in there. Google Maps is quite the thing, and I think an independent coming into the market is not going to be able to challenge. It's a tricky one. But I was also going to ask whether defibrillators they're not a council scheme. I think they're a private scheme from the British Heart Foundation or something. So we wouldn't have control of it. So we would be asking them to input their data in. The defibrillators, I think, are quite brightly lit, and I've seen one down on the river just recently been installed. So they're becoming more noticeable, which is really good news. But yes, good ideas. Thanks very much. Your next question.
Okay. Next one is down to the money, the budget. Was there, in the scheme of things of the council's ambition, as she just stated, to reopen Hammersmith Bridge to motor vehicles, is there any financial or budgetary allocation towards that? If so, how much? What's the business case? And what's the funding source for it? And finally, does it still make sense?
So as Councillor Harcourt set out, the legal position is that we've got an obligation to open the bridge, and so that's part of what we're working towards. So we have money in the capital budget for maintaining the bridge and doing the preparatory work for the renovation. We are waiting on, there was an agreement that the Department for Transport, the Mayor of London, TfL, and the council would each pay a third of the costs for this. We are waiting on additional money, or the money that we're owed from the other two organisations before we push forward with any more funding.
Dare I say, there was a proposal from these three parties. There was a proposal that the three parties would pay equal shares, not an agreement, because nothing actually came forward. And regarding the legal position, two things. One is we checked the legal position, and there is no actual legal compulsion for Hammersmith to rebuild the bridge for motor vehicles. That is one. And the other is the people who were pushing that position, Grant Shapps, Greg Hands, and Baroness de Veur, none of them are in position now. I think there might be a message there.
Concerned about this going down too much of a silo about Hammersmith Bridge, and this is the budget question is very fair.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Ree has answered the budget question, but I think the detail of the legal position, I think, has to be left for a different committee that would be looking at that in detail, because I think it's unfair to put Councillor Ree in that position, on the position to answer Hammersmith Bridge, and it's not in the remit of the agenda of tonight. So if you've got a budgetary question.
Oh, obviously for me, the budgetary question is, if you're looking for £1/3 billion for a bridge, and we're trying to find pots of money for ecological development, development and improvement, where we still have massive questions to do with the way we retrofit our homes and so on and so forth, and the problem, then I really want to understand what the financial what the financial justification for that would be. So that's why it comes back.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say that in the capital budget, we have put aside money for works on the bridge, maintaining the bridge, keeping it standing. And I will contradict you that there was an agreement on the third funding model, and we're waiting on the other two organisations to pay their share.
Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Gautier, would you like to come up and ask on this agenda item?
Thank you. I've got four very, very short questions, all related to the budget. My first question is, as far as we've discussed tonight, net zero is still the official target by 2030, right? Looking at the budget, is it a budget that is bringing us to net zero by 2030? It's not in the 5 priorities. It's not in the strategy that has been mentioned tonight. So that's a fair question. My second question is, the document says offset payments are ring-fenced for like CO2 reductions, but the fund isn't clearly visible in the budget lines. Where is it shown? How much is currently available, and how much will be allocated in 26-27? My third question is about the climate ecology team. So the team will have a budget of 120,000 plus access to one of 750,000 reserve. What outputs can realistically be delivered with 120,000? It's not even 10,000 a month, which is absolutely ridiculous when you think about it. And out of the 100,000 reserve, how much has been spent on what, and what measurable outcomes were achieved? My final question is about the Community Climate Action Fund. So there was a consultation in December. on an external facing climate action fund for community groups. What did we learn? When will it launch? And how much funding will be available? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I can tackle the budget related questions within there. Is this a budget that moves us towards net zero? Yes, absolutely. We've got more than £30 million of capital expenditure for moving us towards net zero. That's a huge investment at a time when the council's resources are stretched very thin, but it is a priority of ours, and that's why we're spending this money. In terms of the £120,000, that's obviously just in the revenue budget. The bulk of spending on climate change is in the capital budget. So the £120,000 gives us something that we can apply for small amounts of grant funding that needs to be matched with. But the real investment in this is part of the capital budget. So that's not necessarily relevant to the day-to-day spending.
And the carbon offsetting, how much is available and how much will be spent? And where is it visible in the budget? Because we can't see it in the documents that have been disclosed.
Is that this, Kelly, can you speak to that, the section 106?
That funds capital expenditure. So what we've talked about tonight is what we've been talking about tonight is a revenue budget. So our day-to-day spending, the capital budget, which is a separate report, and you can see it. It's on the cabinet agenda for next week. That has all the kind of our capital expenditure, like buildings, vehicles, etc. And the carbon offset fund will be in the section 106 bracket. It might not be individually marked, but that's the kind of the bucket that it's in terms of a funding source.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to navigate because it is mentioned in the documents, but then when you look at it, you can't find it. So it's a little bit tricky to yeah.
I think that the main report that you would see the carbon offset is probably the annual section 106 report.
Okay.
I think. So that would be the main one where that's more itemized.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gautier. Any further questions from the floor? Come up. If you could push the speak button and introduce yourself, thanks.
David Wilkins. Just a very quick one. To clarify the legal position on the bridge, you mentioned that was going to be discussed at a different committee. Can you clarify where, when?
It's got to be the other one, the public realm one. Yeah, because it's to do with the actual physical transport, so rather than climate change.
Sure, but yeah. Can I ask that is agendaed at that meeting so we can get some clarity on this, because there seems to be quite different views on it.
We will take it to get back to you on that. We don't have, I don't put into that committee. So, Councillor Ree, you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I'm sure we can raise this with the committee and see if this is something they'll want to talk about again. I'm sure this is an issue of significant interest, and so I'm sure it's something they'll want to discuss in the future.
Thank you. Just for clarification on that particular issue, because if it is as you say, it's fine. That's the situation. If it's not, then it's not. Then, but to clarify it, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. One further question, and then I think we are going to wrap up. We've just got time. If you could push the speaker button and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Rafaela Fitzhugh. I'm a local resident in Shepherd's Bush. Just a quick question on the offset. You talk about the offset being 106 money, but that's not the same as a carbon offset, because that's something completely different. Am I right in saying that? Can you just clarify?
So section 106 is obviously developer contributions. It can be, there are various different kind of types of different buckets of section 106. So there can be, it can be for quite prescribed things like a new roundabout around for a new development. And carbon offset is a sort of another sort of bucket of section 106, if you like, where developers will pay that under certain circumstances, but then that is ring fenced for certain things. So that's why it is a type of section 106 agreement that is paid over.
But just to clarify that when we're talking about net zero, you're not including the whole of the 106 as when you talk about offset. It's just the terminology.
It's just that specific kind of part of section 106 that we're talking about in terms of contributing directly to the carbon offset thing. Is that okay?
The terminology.
There's a number. So there's section 106 covers a lot of different kind of things, and it's kind of.
I think it sounds like we're maybe mixing up carbon offset fund payments and carbon offsetting, which is a mechanism that we haven't really discussed here. We haven't got a policy or a program yet to offset the councils or the borough's carbon emissions, but what is being referred to in the budget are developer contributions, which are part of the section 106 overall part, but there is a specific bucket within that, which is a carbon offset fund payment, which developers provide when they're unable to meet carbon offsetting requirements as part of their development. Carbon targets, sorry, yeah.
So will you be thanks, that explains it. And will you be putting together a carbon offsetting strategy or?
No, there are no plans to at the moment.
But won't that be needed for net zero?
It's the opposite. Well,
I know it's greenwash anyway, but yeah.
Exactly. I think that's probably a debate to be had at some stage. At the moment, we are obviously focusing on reducing the organisations and the borough's carbon emissions rather than looking at offsetting. But offsetting is a mechanism that exists. Developers obviously contribute a fee, and the council will have to consider offsetting in line with kind of international standards at some point.
Thank you for your question. Well, thank you very much for participating and all your questions. We will look at the actions. Particularly, I think what's come out of this is reporting is our key takeaway to work on reporting ways of reporting back so that we do try and be as transparent as possible. Our committees are all held in public and streamed on YouTube. So there is, not trying to be secret. So maybe we need to breach that the gap. Now, in terms of the report, thank you very much, officers and Councillor Ree. And the recommendation to the committee is asked to consider the budget proposals and makes recommendations to Cabinet as appropriate. The committee is asked to consider the proposed changes to fees and charges and makes recommendations as appropriate. Is the presentations noted?
Good.
Noted. Thank you. Work programme. The committee is asked to consider items for inclusion in the work programme. Since we believe the April committee, Policy and Accountability Committee, will be postponed due to the May election, we won't be taking work recommendations for the April committee. It's likely to be cancelled. But there will be a Climate and Ecology Policy and Accountability Committee on the 30th of June 2026. And you are more than welcome to send in recommendations for discussion points. And we will consider those. Regardless of the makeup of the committee going forward, we can pass those on should any of us not still be here. But I want to thank everybody for their commitment and their work tonight. It's been a really interesting committee again. I think we've heard really good things and lots of feedback that we need to take on board. Thanks very much.
Thank you.